Welcome back to another episode of the Me Kevin Show. We got to talk about the Federal Reserve today. We're going to start with the Federal Reserve, then we have a lot of other things to talk about. Of course, Israel, Palestine, some of the latest things in a couple of days. But first, Federal Reserve, Mr. Hawker, who used to be one of the, imagine this, hawks, suggesting it's time for the Federal Reserve to pause. We've heard this before, a lot of back and forth around what the Fed wants to actually do. But the reason here I thought was very interesting about the entire economy, because right now it's not the rich businesses that are suffering. You know who's suffering? It's small businesses. And that's what the Federal Reserve is now paying attention to. Quote, the Fed shouldn't be thinking about raising rates at the same time as so many small businesses are struggling. Think about some of the small businesses struggling today. Contractors, realtors, lenders, the entire housing market has dropped off the cliff in terms of volume. We haven't seen that drop off a cliff really in terms of pricing. It's been volatile, but not volumes. Volumes are in the toilet, and that's bad for anybody who gets paid off of transactions. But think about the ripple effects of housing being in a slow market. You all of a sudden have handy folks who have less work, electricians, plumbers, painters, because what's the first thing somebody does when they buy a house? They change out the rugs and the carpets. In fact, listen to this. I got a message here from a good buddy who is a carpet subcontractor, and they say that their company is one of the preferred installers by a company owned by Berkshire Hathaway in the United States. They're actually pretty close to where Mr. Omaha lives. Anyway, so they mentioned this. We're starting to see a slowdown in home flooring, unusual lack of carpet jobs. This level of unusualness we don't generally see until the week after Christmas. Like, who installs new carpet the week after Christmas? And that's like, you gotta sell by Boxing Day, man. What do you guys think? I mean, like, what do you guys do the week after Christmas?
I don't know. Wasn't Jesus a carpenter, though?
Oh,
he's probably suffering a slowdown too right now, you know?
Holidays are tough.
Like, small businesses are the ones getting reamed. And certainly, I mean, between Christmas and New Year's, you're not going to expect to put no carpet in. But to see that kind of lack of demand now is concerning for not only the Fed, but also a potential recession. So there is this real concern that, hey, could we actually walk into a recession led by small business? And the answer, of course, is yes. 60% of America is driven by small businesses. And which are the companies that are actually dominating right now? Well, it's the cash-rich companies. The companies that could sit around doing nothing, like Microsoft and Apple, whatever. Not saying they're not doing anything, but they could, theoretically. Just milking yields. Milking them. In fact, the average yield that Microsoft and Apple and that are collecting is over 4.5%, while the average interest rate they pay is about 2.99% on their corporate bonds, which means you have a delta there. In other words, the big businesses are doing just fine under higher rates. But the opposite is true of smaller businesses. Businesses have less capital in the bank. So when they have less capital in the bank, guess what? They leave it in their savings or checking accounts earning zero, while at the same time they're paying interest rates at 6%. So it's a disaster. But that's a little starting for us on this potential warning of small businesses leading a recession. Here's another one, actually. Small software firm flashing warning of impending recession. What do you guys think? Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
That was my intro.
I think we're going to get a lot of, I don't want canary in the coal mines, or a lot of signs with what the economy has going forward. With what we hear on the earnings calls coming up, we have J&J, Bank of America, Lockheed Martin, Goldman Sachs on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. On Wednesday, we have Tesla, Procter & Gamble, Netflix, Morgan Stanley. So we've heard just a small tidbit of what has happened. But I really think listening to the earnings calls and reading the transcripts, we'll get an idea of what these companies are thinking for the rest of Q4.
And I wonder if we should be biasing to smaller companies, because when we look at, I mean, JP Morgan threw in like the obligatory, we're in a precarious time or dangerous world, right? Jamie Dimon, he's been quoted like 17,000 times over the last 48 hours. It's like exhausting. I think the media just coordinates. All right, who are we pitching today? Let's go with Jamie Dimon calling everything a disaster, which is actually the most brilliant marketing ever. Like, if you're the CEO of Chase, he's probably just like, you're welcome, ad department. I just saved you guys $5 million in advertising. You get so much freaking advertising. It's in the same vein. He's like, we're in a really dangerous time. But at JP Morgan, we're really safe. I don't know. Like it's wild. So what are you guys seeing out there beyond that? I mean, absolutely, these earnings are going to be big this week. We got Tesla, Morgan Stanley, some of the others you mentioned. What else?
We're really starting to see the real estate market. Sellers are coming back down to earth a little bit. You're seeing massive price cuts. And if you like, well, I'm not going to talk about real estate economics right here, but if you think about it from a seller's perspective, if you think your house is worth $500K, but you can't sell it for $500K and you have to go down to $420, you're going to feel that compression. You may not even want to sell it or move. So these people are going to get hurt by these price cuts on real estate. Like we're seeing it all over. Like at first we started to see it in these select few cities, and then Kevin was like, we have to pay attention to this because it could spread like COVID. Like we have to be really careful. And sure enough, we've seen these price cuts just spread throughout the country. And it's fascinating to watch. I mean, it's part of what we do at HouseHack is making sure that we have our pulse on all the markets that we're in or wanting to be in to kind of find a correlation with price cuts and what's going on.
Well, you can see it change live, and usually you don't see the data actually change live right in front of your face unless you're actually on the ground paying attention to, wow, we went through that house and there were no other buyers. You know, like when you know it's a crazy market, it's kind of like when I put up properties on the market in April, May of 2022, and I remember standing on the street and I'm like, what the hell? And there's just like a line of cars, and it's just like there were so many freaking buyers and no homes. I'm like, this is a bubble. I'm looking around like, this is nuts. Now it's like a house comes on the market and everybody's like, you want to look at a house? So it could be the season though, because the same thing, and that's what we're gonna have to pay a lot of attention to. Is this going to be seasonal like it was last year? Same thing happened, or will it last?
Something interesting. I just talked to an agent in the Utah area, and he said you're starting to see inventory go up on the move-in ready houses, but you're not seeing that same spike follow for the houses that need to be remodeled. So that tells me a couple of things. One, families are not wanting to move right now in Q4. Their kids are back in school. They're getting ready for the holidays. They're not wanting to move during that period. Yep. And with the inventory not spiking for the houses that need to be remodeled, you're still seeing people able to do. You're still seeing a demand from investors, which I think will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, it is a dual dynamic of people who I think you have a lot of flippers who came out of the COVID era who are like, I make sense. I can't lose money because they flipped during COVID. And now it's like, all right, I guess I could do that flip for $5,000. You know, and they're doing flips for like break even, and I'm like, I'm not getting out of bed for break even. You know, it's like, think about it this way: the companies with money are literally sitting here going, am I going to get out of my bed to break even, or do I just sit here, park my money in money markets, and do nothing and get paid 5.5%?
It's tough to beat.
What do you got, Mikey?
No, I agree with that. Housing market, that's usually there's obviously a slump at the end of the year too, so I don't know if that's part of it or if there's something bigger happening. But as far as the stock market, it seems that everyone is optimistic about all the earnings that McKay talked about that are coming up this week. Today we closed S&P 500 was up over 1%, 1.06%. NASDAQ was up 1.2%, and even the Dow was up 93 basis points.
You know what? That's crazy. Like this weekend, I'm looking at, okay, so I'm studying for these like FINRA exams, and as I'm studying, I'm reading like, all right, when the S&P drops 20%, they close trading for the day, right? The circuit breakers. That was like the easy parts of these tests. Then you get into like market making and IPOs and stuff, and it gets entertaining. But anyway, so I'm reading about circuit breakers, and then I'm like, I'm gonna take a break and look at the news, and then I look at Israel, and I'm like, oh my God. Like we're going to open in the whole Monday. I check futures Sunday at 3 p.m. No, it's green. This morning, it's green. Closes, way green.
So
topsy-turvy.
Are the markets not too concerned? Because you released a pretty crazy video this weekend saying like markets hate uncertainty. And we have a lot of high uncertainty at this point with the war, with both wars, with our own economy, with the real estate market, with stocks, earnings. Like there's a lot of uncertainty, yet we closed green after a weekend of some of the most uncertainty we've seen in a while. What's your take?
Well, you've got some diplomatic efforts going on, but you know, one thing I'm pulling up on my phone just because I think it's interesting is if we go back to the peak, right? We go back all the way to, what is that, 406 on the Qs in November of 2021. You're probably going to have to throw at least 12, 13-ish% inflation on that. So if you want to compare inflation adjusted to where we should be if prices, like if the dollar was worth the same, the QQQ index, the NASDAQ, measured by the QQQ, would be at 458. Well, right now it's at 369. So 369 divided by 458, we're down 20%.
Wow.
So on an inflation adjusted basis, we're down 20% off the peak. I mean, that's a correction, right? I mean, you're knocking on the doorway. What is corrections like 10% and then bear markets 20%, right? You're essentially there. So now you ask yourself, okay, well, so is uncertainty basically just staying? It comes and goes, but as every week goes by, is uncertainty getting a little less and less and less, or is it actually getting a little more and more and more? And I mean, based on the stock market, the way it's been moving this year, the answer is less, less, less. The banking crisis is basically solved. People get mad at me when I say this. I see it in the comments. People are like, what do you mean the banking crisis is solved? They're like, if the banking crisis happened when rates were 4.2% and now they're 4.8% on the 10-year, well, now we're really screwed. Wrong. The reason we had a banking crisis is because bond values plummeted, leaving these massive losses for banks holding these as either unrealized or losses that they had to realize. Well, then the Fed just comes in and goes, no, we'll just guarantee all of those. Those are all, we see them all as 100% of their value. Like, imagine you have $100,000 in your investment account, and then you go with $100,000 into margin on your favorite stock, all in on Tesla, baby, whatever, or Boxable. I don't know. Well, Boxable, you'd probably go bankrupt tomorrow. Oh. But so go with Tesla, okay? So you go all in Tesla tomorrow. And so now you have $200K invested, but half of it's margin, and then Tesla drops half. And the bank's like, yo, margin call, you need to sell the leftover 100K you have. And you're like, but then I'll be at zero. And they're like, hold on, Jerome, he'll be at zero if we do that. Right? And then Jerome's like, don't worry, I got you. It's still worth 200. You're good, man. It's still worth 200. Oh my God. Woo! That's basically the banking crisis.
By the way, who is Margin and why do they keep calling me?
I blocked them a long time ago.
I blocked that number, man.
They were green bubbles. I just blocked them.
I put my number on the do not call registry. So anyway, yeah, it's crazy. So what else do we have here? So we got lots of earnings. But earning optimism, you're saying?
Earnings optimism, at least based on how we close today, it looks like this week is going to be a strong one.
That's a good point. I mean, it's almost, if people were really nervous, would the market be up the way it is now? I mean, you had treasury yields up today, 7 basis points on the 10-year, and the stock market up almost up 1% on every index.
Well, I wonder if you had people sitting on the sidelines for this weekend seeing what happened. Like, is Israel really going to invade this weekend? Like, if people wanted to pull out their money, because we closed down deep on Friday, right?
Yeah.
People might have pulled their money out, like, let's just see what's going to happen this weekend with Israel. And then they watch the news. Nothing too crazy actually happens, just a lot of reporting of events still or potential events. And people maybe thought about it, like, what are the potential, like maybe they did a risk reward category and pros and cons and decided to put their money back in today after weighing. I mean, yeah.
Maybe. I mean, it could be too soon to tell. It could be anything, I mean, really, obviously, the massive issues you have right now in Israel are the fact that you have these Iranian, at least, saber rattles, the words, what they're saying, ramping up a bit. And we already know, let's be clear, we already know Iran is supportive of Hamas, whether that's through secret cryptocurrency transactions, even though it's not that secret, it's blunt. And what they do, I see these comments where people are like, oh, why don't the Hamas militants take these crypto donations they get and actually build out the infrastructure, like build out the hospitals or police stations or whatever? No, what they do is they pay themselves salaries. That's what they do. They use this money that comes from Iran to pay themselves salaries so they can exist. So now you always have a militant group that's there. And that's really the rationale for the United States to support Israel so much. Of course, it's an ally. But beyond that, it's also what can you do to destabilize terrorists without you actually putting boots on the ground? Now, earlier you did mention that 2,000 U.S. support troops are going to the region. These appear to be in hospital roles like nursing, doctors, and things like that, which I think is great. It's a great way to support with non-combative roles. Bring U.S. Aid, military quality aid, health aid, care aid, whatever, emergency care to the front lines or near them. I think it's great. We want to minimize lives really on both sides, whether you're captured or not, or you're on the other side. But I do think that this could last a while, and that's the biggest risk. I don't want it to. I really still hope that this is like, look, we asked y'all to evacuate. Now it's blitzkrieg. Israel controls that northern portion of the Gaza Strip. They take control. They establish a temporary government in the north. And you know what? Maybe that's it. Maybe. Unlikely. But maybe that's it. I mean, they have to go somewhere. But maybe now what you've done is you've created you took a third of the Gaza Strip away, and you created a massive buffer zone that's now going to be, the Hong Kong of of Palestine, basically, where it's controlled by Israel, but it's a semi-autonomous region, by elected officials from Palestine. And now you have another buffer zone. And then the argument is, all right, Hamas, you want to try again? You're going to attack our buffer zone? We'll take another third. And you kind of, you do it like that. That could be a scenario that plays out without a World War III. Because I know a lot of people now are talking about, okay, well, Iran's going to get in. Once Iran gets in, then China's going to take Taiwan while everyone's distracted.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I did a little bit of research about what other countries are saying about the war, namely China and Putin. And they had some really interesting comments.
Yeah, Putin's his own country, man. That guy.
Well,
I know what you mean.
So I don't know if we want to dive into it now or later, but Bill Ackman, he posted an interesting tweet. And the reason I don't I'm not going to cite the tweet. I'm just going to cite the ideas of the tweet.
Go ahead. Yeah, sure.
His tweet, his source is literally.
We can plug it in if you want. If you want to pull it up, then we can see it. Oh, you got it.
So
okay, we're coming
Bill
up.
Ackman's source is literally "I trust."
From trust me, bro.
Saying "Trust me, bro." He's saying that you can read it here. A week before the escalation, Russia propaganda TV Sputnik launched a broadcasting TV channel in Lebanon in Arabic.
Yeah.
Just kind of. Nothing.
Well, let's see this. So on the 24th, Russian intelligence space satellite captures of conducting radio, electronic recon, and intercepting satellite signals was moved. Okay, so some devices were moved around. Got it. Okay, so we've got military delegation. I mean, what he's trying to do is create a link that Russia either was prepared to be involved in this or was coordinated in this. And that's entirely likely. I mean, let's be real. The CIA had very clear indicators by October 6th that something was brewing out of the ordinary. By the 27th of September, the CIA was aware of some trouble brewing, but not to the extent they were on October 6th when they're like, wait a minute, this is actually getting serious. Yet Israel still ignores it. We know that which is interesting because, we talked about this last week where it's like, okay, what, Hamas is going to shoot a rocket again? We got this complacency that could happen, right? So from September 22nd, 24th, the Russian military delegation made an official visit to Iran. And remember, Russia's buying drones from Iran, and Iran's even now agreed to build a drone factory in Russia outside of Moscow so they don't have to, because they blow these drones up, they're one-time use. It's like disposable DJIs. What world do we live in? And so now they're closer to you. So you get 1 day prime shipping versus, taking a week. But anyway, we know that in exchange for providing missiles and drones, there it is, to attack Ukraine, there were several requests from the Iranian side, including the expansion of intelligence capabilities. Sure. Well, I mean, let's be clear. I think I'm curious to see what else Bill Ackman goes into, but yes. This is absolutely why the United States is so heavily for supporting Israel, not just with ships in the water, but money to fund essentially the entire war. Because this operation, this invasion, is being called defensive. As long as it's being called defensive, guess who pays for it? We do. America pays for it.
A lot of people, a lot of countries like Putin. And there was
Russia. Russia is the country.
Russia.
Yes. I know what you mean.
Okay. Russia has been saying that this isn't. They're crossing the line of this is not defensive anymore. That they're saying this is past the line of self-defense. You are now insinuating a further attack. To quote it directly, he said that on Friday, the Russian President Vladimir Putin raised the possibility that intensified siege of Gaza by Israel may resemble that of the Leningrad. How do you say that?
Leningrad. Can you pull up the tweet again? We can see it directly from there.
This isn't from the tweet. This is from The Guardian.
Oh, okay.
The Guardian did a piece.
So Putin basically is comparing this to Leningrad. So you've got. Look, I mean, Putin is we touched on this a little bit too, but it is very interesting because what Putin's trying to do is honestly, this is where Trump gets misquoted and people are like, oh my God, Trump said Putin's smart or whatever. But really what he's doing from his point of view, I think, is probably the smartest thing to do, which is, okay, so you're evil and you're attacking Ukraine. So how do you mitigate that? Well, we're doing what's best for Russia. That's the first thing you do, which is, of course, what they said, because their goal is to, quote, unquote, denazify Ukraine. So they're marketing this as we're doing the best for Russia. A. B, okay, now we're going to make sure if if the United States sanctions us, well, we need other trade partners. So to whom are we going to go? Well, we're going to go to Brazil, India, China, Iran, whatever. Anywhere else, Kazakhstan, wherever we can get what we need from. Turkey, we'll work with them then. Which, quite frankly, that is one of the downsides of U.S. sanctions, is the more you push someone into the corner, the more they become friends with your enemies.
Yeah.
Right? So it's very interesting. And then the third thing is this PR push of comparing this invasion of Israel into the Gaza Strip, Putin doing this, is really a way of supporting Iran. Because it's kind of like, all right, Iran, thanks for supplying us drones. Iran's like, yo, can you get them to back off a little bit? They're ruining our buddies. Okay, we'll make a statement.
Yeah.
It's like, it's empty. It's worthless, but it is interesting.
Yeah, he also continued to say that this is an attack unprecedented in its cruelty by Hamas militants, so he's obviously condoning what Hamas did.
Good, that's I see.
And had the right to defend itself, but was responding in cruel methods of its own. Quote, the civilian casualties, and then in brackets, likely in the event of an Israeli ground offensive, end of bracket, will be absolutely unacceptable. Now, the main thing to do is stop the bloodshed. So Putin's kind of playing both sides, calling for peace, like in a way that obviously is kind of unrealistic in the eyes of many, calling for peace. And then the Chinese foreign minister over the weekend said that Israel's bombing campaign had gone, quote, far beyond the scope of self-defense and, quote, should stop collective punishment of the people of Gaza. So you have the Chinese foreign minister and you have Putin kind of defending Israel here in telling them to stop attacking. Are they being unrealistic, or do you think that they have merit to what they're trying to say?
Well, I mean, obviously there are two sides of this argument. On one hand, Israel says we're tired of living under the constant siege of your rockets being lobbed over to our side. Like, why should we have to live under this constant threat? Why should we even have to have an Iron Dome, right? This was what you mentioned, Mikey, last week, which is like, this is the only country in the world where that's acceptable, because in any other country, it's like you'd be fighting back so hard. Well, now Israel's had it, right? So this is like the straw that broke the camel's back is really what this is. So, excuse me. It's like I'm choking on myself here. So it's not just the atrocity that was conducted on the music festival and then the villages in the southern region of Israel. It's not just that. It's the culmination of really like 60 years of this kind of pain that has never really been resolved. And is that now being met with on a comparative level with 10x the force, as we mentioned last week, an escalation?
An escalation, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It absolutely is. Like we said, a non-escalation would be, all right, you guys are going to pay for this over the next 10 years financially, and we're going to build a bigger wall.
So if you have Russia and China telling Israel to stop, but then you have the United States sending over... sending over their ships, and then sending over like aid with their troops.
Right.
Like it creates the illusion of America and Israel versus Russia, China, and then the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, I would bet there's a limit to how aggressive the United States is trying to push Israel. I suspect one of the reasons we saw our Secretary of State head over there is to actually in the back rooms, publicly denounce what's going on, but in the back rooms, guys, okay, let's limit this, okay? How about we just go for Gaza City? I would not be surprised if that was a United States suggested. I think a week ago, Israel's like, that's it. Gaza Strip, no more. It's Israel's Vegas Strip now. We're going to level it and rebuild. And I wouldn't be surprised if the involvement of the United States has led to, okay, let's rein this in a little bit. We know you're pissed, rightfully so. What can we do to, surgically strike a little bit more here so we can minimize the loss of life? Because, quite frankly, the dying of children and civilians is disgusting, no matter who you are.
Yeah. You're actually right on the nose with the Anthony Blinken over there, because he specifically, and this is reported per Israeli news that I found, but he said that they need to start allowing for humanitarian aid into Gaza. Otherwise, the United States will not, will not ensure continued international support for a ground invasion on the Strip. So they are kind of using that to threaten. And apparently Netanyahu right now, their cabinet is discussing whether or not that's actually possible. But it's just, what kind of rubbed me the wrong way is they dropped leaflets and they're telling everyone in Gaza, like, flee to the south, right? And then over the weekend, what happened is they bombed the southern border. And actually, I have a really quick video of that.
Please.
It's like
Let's see that.
6 seconds long.
Let's see that. All right.
جديدة طالت هذه هي الصورة كما تتابعونها الآن القصف مصور عملية.
Yeah, that's just it. But they
It's
attacked
like
the southern border.
some form of structure here, apparently, or allegedly, we don't know, on the southern border.
Yes, the Egyptian border with Gaza.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? You know, this is like it goes down to CIA level stuff too, where you're like in Afghanistan, you're like, all right, we think there's gonna be a bomb attack at the airport. Let's follow the white Toyota Camry. And then, oh no, we followed the wrong white Toyota Camry and bombed a dad who was coming home to his 6 children. That has happened. Christian, we could probably pull off that one the other way. And I want to touch on that because that New York Times piece, well, I know a lot of people hate the Times, but it was actually a very good research piece. And that New York Times piece, where their reporters went to the ground and interviewed the actual victim's family who were still alive, and then they had ballistics experts and weapons experts and everything. This is right after we withdrew from Afghanistan. Mind you, there was an explosion at the airport in Afghanistan, and that killed some U.S. soldiers. If I remember, 2 or 3, along with maybe like 20, 30 others?
Yes.
Something like that, right? So, but anyway, so the CIA was right that there was going to be an attack from a suicide car, basically. Someone driving, a suicide bomber in a car. And it was a white car. So the CIA was right. They just followed the wrong person.
And it's usually a Toyota, so they were right about that too.
It's always a Toyota, man. And one day it'll always be Teslas.
Yeah, the Cybertrucks in the Middle East. Can you imagine?
Oh my
Finally
gosh.
replace the Land Cruisers.
Yeah. So, but you look at a clip like that, and I mean that could very likely just be intelligence on the ground. Okay, we saw some militants go in there. We don't know necessarily that image is. Israel says go south, and then oh look, here's a bomb going off in the south. Oh, Israel, you're lying. Like I don't.
Well, they weren't attacking civilians for sure,
Right.
but the problem is that was the only entrance for humanitarian aid, and so that's
That
why
gate.
I think yes, and that's why I think Blinken is over there going like, hey, you gotta stop, like you gotta allow for humanitarian aid to enter, otherwise we can't fund this anymore.
And I think that's unfortunately the part of war where Israel's probably saying, look, we the less food, water, electricity they have, the fewer calories people have, and quite frankly, now you're tired and less capable of fighting. So it's it's actually very medieval. The way you attack a castle is you cut off its supply routes, and then what?
Let them starve.
Siege.
You wait.
Yeah.
You just wait. Just wait. It's
There were
crazy.
a couple of things we talked about that sparked some thoughts too. Yeah. You mentioned the siege of Leningrad.
That's what Putin referred to as what is about to happen to the Gaza Strip.
The thing about that is anytime you hear Leningrad mentioned by the Kremlin or by Putin, that is in some way or another a type of propaganda, and it goes really, really strong with the Russian people because the siege of Leningrad, I should have brushed up on it before this, but that was a year-long siege from the Nazis, and that was
864 days.
over 2 years.
Wow. Jeez, yeah.
And that was, Putin was born then and there and basically defied the odds by surviving with, limited resources and all that. A lot of people were dying, but here's this baby that survived. So to this day, that is used as like the main source of propaganda against basically Nazis. And that's why you'll hear Russia calling everybody a Nazi. There's Nazis there, there's Nazis there, because that's, Putin stands for the opposite of that.
It's deeply ingrained.
Yes.
in
So you hear
history.
Leningrad or you hear Nazis, and that's what's coming to mind of the Russian people is the siege of Leningrad.
Now, another thing to consider here also is just the economics at play. So consider the GDP of Israel versus the United States. So we're at like $23 trillion of GDP. Israel is at about 488 billion. So we divide this out. That's half divided by 23. We're looking at about something like that. We're looking at 46 times. We are 46 times the economy of Israel. And GDP doesn't mean like government profit. It means production. How much do we produce, not how much do we keep, right? So what's crazy about that is this war would absolutely not be possible if it were not funded by the U.S. government. Because for us, what's another $100 billion? For Israel, that could be 2-3 years of government revenues, which is crazy. So now all of a sudden you look at, again, the U.S. debt going up. But then the question is, at what point does that matter? Right? Everybody's worried about our debt, and rightfully we should be as Americans. Like, this debt is unsustainable. But if we don't have a recession and then we start growing again, does that matter? I guess it matters when we have a recession because then it's going to hurt. That's really going to hurt. I'm very interested to see what the like how much actually net the government revenues are over there. I'll do a little looking really quick. But anyway, what else we got?
Well, so just while we're talking about funding, we've talked about Israeli funding, but Reuters actually just released a really interesting piece about who's funding Hamas.
Let's see.
So I want to go over some of the things that I found with that article. So Hamas does use a global network. They use charities. They use cryptocurrency. A couple of things we talked about. But looking into the specifics, so earlier this week, Israeli police stated they froze a Barclays bank account linked to Hamas funding. They've blocked cryptocurrency accounts. They haven't stated how much, but there's been cryptocurrency accounts soliciting donations that have been blocked. And funny enough, earlier this year, I found out Hamas had already stated that they're going to stop using cryptocurrency. Guess why? Why do you think Hamas would stop using cryptocurrency?
Because they didn't trust the exchanges.
I mean,
That's not it.
You could do without the exchanges. Why? Well, that's interesting because, well, I mean, your customers would have to use it. But then it becomes traceable to some extent.
Because the values collapsed.
Yep, it's that.
That's it?
They
It's that
lost
simple?
so much in cryptocurrency that they're like, we're done with this.
Oh my gosh! Wow, it was beyond practical.
Yeah.
It's literally just it's here's your
Stonk go down.
Yeah. Wow.
That's it.
Hey, we
Sell.
just donated $10 million to Hamas. Oh,
Thanks
it's
for your
only
$2
worth-
million. Yeah. I'm going to do a lot with this $500K.
The currency
Sell.
fluctuates, of course.
Yep.
It's not even anything complicated.
But according to the U.S. State Department, Iran does provide up to $100 million annually to Palestinian groups, which include Hamas, not limited to only Hamas. Some of that money obviously moves through shell companies, precious metals, things like that. And by 2022, Hamas had established a secret network of companies managing $500 million of investments in companies from Turkey to Saudi Arabia. The United States ended up sanctioning those firms in the spring, in May of 2022. Qatar has paid hundreds of millions to Gaza since 2014. At one point, sending up to $30 million per month, and this was basically to help operate the sole power plant that was in the Gaza Strip. But these funds were actually done legitimately. They passed through Israel electronically, and then UN officials would take the money in cash and go up to the border and give them out to people who needed it in Palestine. Wow. And they were specifically targeting needy families and public servants. And so what happened was they would basically send over the money and they'd have a piece of paper, and then the families or individuals accepting the money would have to sign their name next to that. And there was 3 copies of that paper. One would go to the UN, one would go to Qatar, and one went back to Israel. So the Qatar donations actually seem to be the only legitimate kind of funding over here. But with
and you said Iran is funding how much? 100 million? You said
100 million annually.
100 million annually.
This
Okay.
is per the United States State Department.
All right, yeah. I mean, that pays for a lot of Hamas salaries. The entire GDP, again, not net revenues of Palestine, is like 18 billion, which compare that to Israel, and it's like 5%. So it's like Israel's like 5% of America. Palestine's like 5% of Israel.
Maybe I'm misinterpreting
low.
something, but it seems kind of like a similar pattern of what we saw with Prigozhin, how it's a private entity that was paid for. The government won't actually support it, but you had to privately, not like discreetly kind of provide private funding for these militants. Is that anywhere on the same page as what this could be, or do you think it's different?
I mean, funding is everything. It's everything, and I wonder. I'm just looking at how the Israeli currency is doing too. So, which partly plays into this too, because remember when the invasion happened in Ukraine and with Prigozhin and everything, the Russian currency plummeted, which makes sense. I mean, you're going to fund this war, you're going to have to print so much more money, and so your currency tumbles. I'm looking at Israel versus the dollar right now. You are down year over year. Oh, let's see this. Let's do this. Over the last 2 years, you're down 21%. Over the last year, you're down about 11.7%. Obviously, since the war, you've had a little bit more of a drop as well, maybe another 4%. I mean, those are pretty big currency fluctuations. So I think funding's a big problem. Was that your question? I may have missed the first part of your question.
It was like, is there any similarities with the Wagner Group and how they were funded privately rather than, the money was passed through from the state of Russia down to Wagner. Could you see something different? I mean, Palestine wouldn't want to fund, or could they be? Is there another country that could
you're
be
suggesting
privately funding?
Palestine funding like Hamas,
or is there another government
that's called
that
Iran?
specifically? You think it's that direct, Iran to Hamas?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there's also going to be some of the government revenue that's going because they are a political faction to Hamas. But I mean, that would be interesting too. Is looking at the government revenue for Palestine. I suspect it's tiny. I mean, you just can't sustain a large operating force of fighters, and that's why this I expect to be a blitzkrieg, just purely because of the money.
So why do you think it didn't happen this weekend? You were hoping that if it were to happen, it'd be quick and that they would be over fast, and you were maybe estimated it could be this weekend. Why do you think the delay?
Well, I mean, theoretically, if they wanted to rush it, they could have just started storming into Palestine last weekend. Like not even 2 days ago. I mean, like 10 days ago, right? Why even wait 10 days? Well, it's because of what we talked about earlier. It's just starve them out. It's terrible. It is a 100% humanitarian crisis. You start getting in there, and people are doing this now. You go on Telegram, you see this stuff. It's terrible. People are digging through rubble to find food right now. Like that's how survival is happening in the areas that have been bombed. Is you just dig through rubble, hoping to find a refrigerator that's still intact. Can you actually move the concrete jungle out of the way that's now collapsed on top of it? Can you get any food out of there? Is it still good? Really, what it seems like people are able to pull out are just packaged goods, chips that are now crumbled, obviously.
And they don't have any running water or any energy right now on top of that.
Just the only thing you have is fuel driven based on the generators that you're able to operate.
And that's going to run out in a matter of days to weeks.
If it hasn't already run out,
yeah,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's horrible. So, I mean, this is all part of the strategy. I do think the diplomacy of, really, if you think about it, Russia, and this is crazy to say, but Russia, China, and the U.S., all of them are basically trying to rein in Israel. That is a way of all of them working together. How weird is that?
That is pretty weird.
Okay, so Russia, China, and the U.S. all like, well, okay, whoa, hold on a second here. We can fund you up to this point, and think about it. If you hold the purse, you control what happens.
Yeah.
So
what's the golden rule?
Well, the golden rule is those with the gold make the rules, right? So, I mean, that's literally Israel. From what I hear, they like gold in Israel. So if you want to conduct any kind of invasion, you need money. You don't have the government revenues to do it. I was just calculating a conversion over here a little bit. You've got maybe, I'm getting somewhere around $9 to $50 billion maybe available depending on the year of government revenue. You don't have the money, and you don't have a Jerome Powell that you can call to fund this war. $9 billion. How many Iron Dome rockets does that get you? That would be very interesting to calculate out.
So
divided by about 50,000. So if we do like hey Siri, $9 billion divided by 50,000. Let's find out. That gets you 180,000 rockets, which sounds like a lot, but when they're lobbing per attack 3,000 to 5,000, you start losing Iron Dome rockets pretty fast.
Yeah.
That's your entire budget.
My last question, and then we can maybe move on from Israel today. But we have so many of these Middle Eastern countries helping fund the Palestinians. How come none of those countries, why do you guys think none of those countries have stepped up and said, hey, we're going to take your refugees now during this humanitarian crisis? Like, everyone's quick to give them their money, but why is nobody actually helping the people?
So they want money.
Refugees are a liability.
They need money. Who's going to pay for them?
Yeah.
It's
both housing, jobs, food. And if you do that, you risk kicking out your own people.
Or pissing them off, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. When Germany takes Syrian migrants, it's for humanitarian purposes. We look and we say, hey, for humanitarian purposes, Germany's going to take Syrian migrants, and so do other parts. Syria always pops up. So do other parts of Europe, whether that's France or Greece or Italy. But then what happens is you get a cultural transition that happens in each area. You now have poorer individuals of a different culture coming into your town. Well, somebody has to support them because now they're going to your schools, your coffee shops, to your doctor shops, whatever, everything, right? And this is really, basically what you do is eventually you just sort of mix what's it called, the melting pot. You create the melting pot of cultures, kind of like a downtown LA. You walk around, you're like, there's every different culture here. Now, I personally don't care. I don't mind that. But people do. Like, people in their countries, they still care substantially about that. And I'm not saying that's right, or I'm not saying that's wrong. But there are very, very clear cultural divisions still in Germany, in France. I mean, even just those countries themselves, they're so different. France is so different from Germany. And Germany's so different from the United Kingdom, which is so different from Italy, which is so different from Spain.
Yeah.
You go to like San Francisco, and then you go to Texas. That would seem like it would be different, and it is to some extent, but it's not so different. Like, America still has a lot of similarities. You still go there, it's like, okay, I am now on vacation here, and what do we got? Chipotle, Target, it's all GameStop.
Well, if you think about your question from, if we look in the mirror of the United States, so many people are angry that the United States is letting so many people in that's uncontrolled, that like we don't know who's coming into our country from the southern border. Like the people that are making these policies in DC, they're not the people living in El Paso. They're not living in the southern border of Arizona or Southern California. Like, they don't see the effect. Whereas these people that are on the southern borders can feel the population increase. They can feel the government having to subsidize these people that are needing to go public schools. And so I think you can kind of make it a similar analogy. Obviously, like war refugees are slightly different from maybe people that are wanting just to try to come to the United States. But I mean, they're technically seeking, what is it called?
Asylum. I mean, it's basically
Yeah.
war. I mean, you go to like Venezuela or well, maybe not Venezuela, but some
Venezuela's
parts
pretty bad.
Is it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, you go to some parts of South America, and it's pretty. You may as well be at war.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, you would probably get more support if you were actually at war, because it's like gang warfare. So gangs, drugs, whatever, fentanyl coming into Mexico, manufactured by material coming from China. It's all a disaster. But it goes back to where we started this tangent that I went down of why are the other countries not stepping up? Funding. If the United States right now, that's how easy it is. If the United States right now, I would bet money on it, right now, said, Egypt, here's 100 bills, set up some tents. Yes, sir. Done.
That's
Solved.
what I've been thinking too, is in the Sinai, that might be one of the only recourse they have.
Yep.
So is it fair then, because obviously we give the U.S. a lot of shit for fighting a proxy war and using Israel basically as their pawn.
Yes.
So would it be accurate then to say that a lot of these other Middle Eastern countries, Iran, Saudi Arabia, even Turkey, are basically fighting a proxy war using Palestine? Because they're sending them the money but refusing to take the refugees.
Yeah.
Are they setting it for a payday? Like, are they gonna blindside Palestine and wait for a payday from the United States?
It's a negotiation is what it is. War is nothing but a very high stakes and disgusting negotiation. Everybody wants something. It's usually land, because land has resources. That would be access to oil, farmland, whatever. And the problem is, in the Middle East, you're right, the other countries are also to some extent benefiting from destabilizing Israel. The more Israel is on defensive, the less Israel is on the offensive, screwing around with Turkey or whatever. I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying, theoretically, that would be a way to destabilize Israel, is have somebody else fight them.
Yeah, going back to one more thing on Russia, and then we can move on. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's an important topic.
Something that a lot of commentary was saying on Twitter is it's in Russia's benefit to keep all eyes off of Ukraine right now, because maybe Russia might be able to make certain advancements on Ukraine without the whole world watching. Everybody's watching what's going on with Israel right now. People may not be paying as much attention to Ukraine. Do you think that's a strategy by Putin to divert all attention and advance right now?
Not really. I don't think there's a single military official in charge of supporting Ukraine or working for Ukraine on the Ukrainian border that's like, okay, guys, we can't go invade that trench tomorrow because there's a war in Israel. Nobody cares. Like, we have to remember, this is not like, it's not like a startup where it's like there are 10 people and, there's a fire in the toilet because, somebody had chili cheese chips the day before and everybody's running around looking for a plunger, and everything else stops. That could be like a startup. Whereas when you're running the United States, you got to think you've got like thousands of these startups everywhere. And, there's the Ukraine startup, there's this, there's that, everywhere in the United States. So the United States can absolutely operate in multiple of these fronts. It's not a problem at all.
Cool. All right, what's next?
All right, well, I guess since we're talking politics, let's go into U.S. politics, then we can end with some business, Taylor Swift and some Tesla updates too. So Bernie Sanders, do you remember that guy?
Mr. Bernie. Yeah, what's up, Mr. J? Come on, come say hi. You gonna say celebration because it's 5? Why don't you come say it to right here? Come here. Come say celebration.
Celebration is exactly 5.
Yay! We like celebrating when it's exactly what time it is. So we should probably be done in about 20 minutes. You want to hang out? You could go raid the fridge if you want, see if there's some candy. Okay. And then we'll build the Millennium Falcon. How's that sound?
That's a good deal.
Cool. That's a good deal.
Good negotiation.
So, okay, go ahead.
Bernie Sanders, he calls for a new income tax. And this is a 100% tax on anybody making over $1 billion. And to quote him, he said, "You may disagree with me, but I think people can make it on $999 million. I think they can survive just fine." So, and remember, he also tried to instill a wealth tax. That was part of his campaign when he was running for president a few years back. The extreme wealth, the 0.1% basically getting taxed. And he was saying that would only apply to people, with 32 million or more. And even then, you're only dealing with I think it was a 1% tax on those people and kind of scaling up. But so I just kind of wanted to open up that for discussion. I know you maybe had some comments to make.
I think Bernie, as old as he is a genius marketer, because if he said, we're doing a 60% tax on billionaires, nobody's going to pay attention to that. But 100% on anything over $1 billion, man, like that got us talking about it. I think, I don't know, what is Bernie running for? Is he running for president? Like what is he doing?
He can't run, he can barely walk.
Oh, jeez. So what is he trying to do right now?
Well, Bernie is a symbol of a very populist agenda, right? Which is what is popular for 99% of people, and that is to redistribute money from people who make over $1 billion a year.
Eat the rich.
Yeah, essentially, and then it's like, hey, why don't we share some of that billions of dollars? His argument on one side is responded to by wealthier folks who say, well, I mean, that disincentivizes people from having startups and becoming a billionaire. And his counter argument is, well, like I said, you could do just fine on 999 million. Then, of course, you have the complexities of like, well, are you actually making $1 billion a year, or is it like stock appreciation, which, Mike, you had brought that up. Is it appreciation? How do you tax that? Well, now if you get into wealth taxes, who's going to appraise those? Is it going to be Donald, who says Mar-a-Lago is worth $1 today, and then when it comes to the trial, it's worth $1 billion tomorrow? Again, the value is in the eye of the beholder, as we're finding through this Trump trial. So this is very classic Bernie. I would expect nothing less from Bernie. It's actually kind of entertaining to see what's the next latest marketing ploy.
I'm telling you, genius marketing.
It's marketing. I mean, it's like Trump. Here I am, another indictment. Yeah, it's marketing. It pitches the donate to the campaign. It pitches donate to Bernie Sanders. Just like we should mention, we have an expiration for the HouseHack fund. This year's expiration is November 1. So if you want to be an investor in HouseHack, make sure you read the offering circular at HouseHack. It's my real estate startup. You're going to be seeing a lot of videos over the next 2 weeks from HouseHack. Some of the properties that we've already been renovating and working on, some of the wedge deals we've got, what we're seeing in markets. So be transparent about it. So buckle up, subscribe, make sure you see what's going on in the real estate market from firsthand accounts of what's going on in multiple different markets around the country. It's going to be some really good reporting. But anyway, go to househack.com to learn more about that.
November 1st is really coming up.
It's coming soon. Jay Powell speaks on the 19th, by the way, which I delayed our flight on the 19th because I want to cover Jay Powell.
Good to know.
So I already moved that back a little. Jay Powell speaks 9 a.m. on the 19th. Which is, I think he's speaking at some kind of conference in New York or whatever, but everybody listens when Jay Powell talks. When all these other Fed people talk, they get like a little byline. Jay Powell, though, everyone tunes in.
Gotta listen to Jay Powell.
Jay Powell. Jay Powell.
One more question from the Bernie Sanders thing, and then we can move on to Trump, which is like the opposite of Bernie Sanders.
Donald Trump.
So Sanders' whole thing is, there's a really big wealth inequality, and we have to bridge that gap. And obviously the way we tend to do that right now is increasing minimum wage, which kind of leads to inflation. And then that's kind of like it keeps cycling over and over. So you might hate this as a capitalist, but my question for you is there some merit in taxing the rich, especially the mega rich, to a higher degree in order to bridge that gap? Or is the best way to do that to keep increasing the minimum wage? Or is there a different way to do that?
Well, so the United States has a really interesting system because when we look at our tax system, especially in a state like California, once you make over a certain amount, you're paying like 55% in taxes. But then you start looking at, okay, basically what you have to do is you have to play the game. Like you open up the tax book. Like we have a little noob versus pro course, like how to never pay taxes, right? And it's that's at meetkevin.com, by the way, link below. But anyway, so you open up the tax book and go, all right, what am I spending money on this year, government? And this year it might be, it's buy a plane, buy solar, open a chip manufacturing company, or it's research and development tax credits. Whatever you could do, you have to get smart about playing the game, or you work towards minimizing your income by investing more in passive wealth and lessening your active wealth. Well, one way you do that, one way you lessen your active wealth is by hiring people. Hire people, spend money, you buy an office, you furnish it out, you hire people. Now you're spending money, you're lowering your active income, but you're increasing the wealth that you potentially have via the value of your businesses you've created. And so in some sense, the U.S. tax system is really designed to get you to do stuff. Because if we taxed wealthier people even less, then it's kind of like, okay, now you get to where it's like, all right, I got all this and I'm keeping enough of it. Maybe you don't have to spend as much. Whereas then the question becomes, at what point does you giving away more than half of your money and you not playing the tax strategy game become unfair? And that's where the debate is. Like, well, how high should it be? 80% like it used to be, 90% for some of these high incomes? At some point, you do stop incentivizing creativity. So that's a tough one. I don't know that one will be solved anytime soon. I think the best thing we could do in America is fix our education system.
Agreed.
Yeah, and because that way everybody can create their own value. As much as possible, which eventually, when we're at some point in the long-term future, the corruption of capitalism turns into socialism, which turns into communism. Eventually, you'll probably end up getting back to some kind of socialism, and that's where society starts going into collapse. But I think we've got plenty of time of value still to provide, so I'm very optimistic.
All right. I guess lightning round for the end of the thing. We got a couple more topics. Let's do 4 minutes per topic. Trump, he got hit by a gag order. This is, I actually have this on my screen. He reposted this from Truth Social by a guy named Mike Davis. And this is regarding the fact that, he got a gag order from basically talking crap about the jury, the judge, everyone else over there. And he basically says, barring a criminal defendant from publicly criticizing the prosecutor and judge is clearly unconstitutional. Gagging a presidential candidate is what happens in third world Marxist hellholes. The D.C. Circuit must fix D.C. Obama judge Tanya Chitkin's clearly erroneous ruling. And by the way, the judge's statement on this was that First Amendment protections yield to the administration of justice and to the protection of witnesses. His presidential candidacy does not give him the white card to vilify public servants who are simply doing their job. And she said that she will impose sanctions if she sees any violations. Obviously, Trump's going to be appealing this. But this is not the first time it's happened. It's not even the first time it's happened this month. What I found out going back to early October, the judge overseeing Trump's civil fraud trial, he issued a gag order on him just the other week, barring him from making comments about the court staff, because he also posted a social media attack on the judge's principal clerk, the law clerk, including her photo, so kind of doxing her in a way too, because that's personal information. And so that judge had said this morning, one of the defendants posted his social media account a disparaging, untrue, and personally identifying post about a member of my staff. Personal attacks on members of my court staff are unacceptable, inappropriate, and I will not tolerate them under any circumstances. And then basically he also said that if he fails to abide by those, there's going to be more serious sanctions. So lightning round conversation on basically freedom of speech versus kind of impeding like the judicial rule here.
Trump's brilliant. He's like totally breaking court ethics, but he knows that we are after like the Twitter files, people are so anti-censorship that even where you're supposed to be okay with censorship, like in court where it's like, follow the rules, you speak when spoken to. Like, look at Judge Judy, okay, just to really simplify this. Somebody says something stupid on Judge Judy, they get yelled at or kicked out or she rules against them. Like, it's like a dictatorship in the courtrooms, right? And Trump is in there like, wrong, you're wrong, lady. You're going to get sanctioned. Fine, donate.
Yes, basically donate.
Yeah.
McKay, thoughts?
I mean, doxing public officials that are just doing their job, not the coolest thing, but I mean, Trump's gonna fight to win anything he can to get as much publicity as he can, and he's getting more publicity from getting a gag order than as if they didn't give it to him.
Of course.
So he's winning. Trump doesn't. It's hard. Trump doesn't lose unless he loses an election.
Well,
that's the only thing he'll lose.
What are they gonna do? Fine him $20,000 and he raises $500,000, from getting gagged? Like he's figured this crazy niche out where the more crazy crap he does, the more people are like, oh, shit just got real. And then they send more money. It's like watching Fight Night, It's like, he just did that. It's so entertaining.
It's really entertaining. When they say sanctions, is that just fines?
Lashings, whips.
Yeah.
Whips. Yeah, no fines.
See, that would actually be more publicity for him. That'd be even better for Trump.
Okay.
All right, next. What do we got?
All right, we're going to get a little more entertaining here. Let's talk about Tay Swizzle. Ooh. So Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, obviously she just went on this tour. Now there's a movie that came out that's basically just like, I think it's 5 of her shows put together.
It's just cut. It's the same show, just 5. They filmed it 5 times, right, Christian? They filmed it 5 times and then cut it up?
Well, it was filmed across 3 nights.
3 nights.
3 nights.
3 nights in LA. And she wore the same thing each time, right?
Yeah.
So she chopped up stuff she was already selling tickets for and turned it into a movie that's now rivaling what in the box office?
The Joker.
I believe she's.
She is so brilliant,
I
man.
believe she's also getting more than 50% of the revenue.
Wow.
And I believe
They
I saw that at one place.
The studios went directly with AMC distribution, so they cut out the.
That explains
studios.
so much. Christian, how many of those shows did you go to?
What, the concert?
The
or
concerts.
5.
Only 5?
That's the velocity of money right there.
Yeah.
Don't go to one show, go to 5. That's
It's
awesome.
crazy that she's getting a percentage of the revenue too. She's like double monetizing it. Because if you're Taylor, you're like, look, I know the ticket scalpers are so evil. They made the prices so expensive, so I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to watch it. And I mean, if you watch it on like Twitter, it's like people's reactions. It's like a full-fledged concert in some of these rooms. People are on the ground singing
They're
and
singing,
jumping
they're
around.
dancing around. Yeah.
These are like some of the happiest people in the world, the Swifties. Like, I don't think there could ever be like a war amongst Swifties.
Just don't make them mad.
Well,
They'll come get you.
Well, yeah, there could be war against them, but not within them.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
that's what I mean.
they'll
Like,
find you.
It is so like it's actually inspiring. I mean, like Taylor Swift inspires me. I think she's amazing. Like, good for her. This is brilliant. Going around, you know. I mean, I know some people are going to be pissed in terms of who got cut out, but good for AMC. I don't know if that's actually going to save AMC, but you know what it could do, and what it will do. Here's what it will do. It's going to inspire every other artist to do that.
That's true.
Because think about it. If you're playing a concert anyway, and you're getting paid very well to play at the concert anyway, and somebody's like, we're Netflix, we'll just film it and chop it up and throw it in movie theaters and you take 50%. Fantastic. Yes, please sign me up.
Yeah, Netflix.
How do you lose?
The Netflix move will probably be like, we're going to make a show. It's going to be multiple seasons. They'll cut it after the first season, but they're still going to try.
Yeah. You know, I mean, like, what part of me is like, think about it this way. Do you want to come up with a new script as like a Netflix, for example, or the movie theaters? Are we going to come up with a whole new movie script that could flop? Or take a Beyonce that's already popular and Taylor Swiftize it? It's like a no-lose.
You know our man Christian's in the movie.
Ooh, you got some shots in there?
Yeah, that was a road to.
Hell yeah.
You gotta look really closely, but I'm in there.
Okay, we're going to have to blow that up the next slide.
A couple just facts on this one, and then we can move on. The Eras Tour grossed $96 million at domestic box offices, looking at $128 million worldwide. And your comment, Christian, about AMC makes sense now because $92.8 million of that was in AMC theaters alone. That's massive. Wow. You know,
Best place to see it.
if Taylor
Dolby.
Swift single-handedly like fixes AMC,
Yeah.
everybody on Wall Street bets is going to become a Swiftie.
Yeah, no kidding. I think she's great. She's inspired me since I've been in college, and that was what, in 2010, 9, 10, something like that. Anyway, she's awesome.
8 movies moved their release dates because of the Eras Tour release.
Wow.
One
Yeah.
of them was Dumb Money, the GameStop Saga movie, and the other was The Exorcist.
That's pretty.
Exorcist.
Taylor
The
Swift is
GameStop
making
Saga
moves.
movie. Okay, maybe Wall Street Bets isn't a fan of Taylor Swift. That was their movie.
They moved it up, so it was earlier release.
Oh, I
think.
see. I
They
see.
just didn't want it to like get. Yeah.
All right, couple more things. We got some Tesla news. This is for both the Semi and the Cybertruck. Tesla Semi recently went through some testing against some competitors, and it absolutely blew the water out with the competition. Ooh. So this is Run on Less organized. Well, actually, Run on Less was the name of the thing. It's organized by the North American Council for Freight Efficiency. And so basically, it's people looking at how they can, reduce emissions with freight and also reduce not just carbon footprint, but make things cheaper. And so it just basically tests efficiency, technologies, get to the bottom line for fleets. So it beat its rival in real-world tests. It showed advantages in range, charging efficiency, and performance by a significant margin. So some of the numbers,
1%.
bigger.
Ooh.
PepsiCo. By the way, I saw a Semi just on my drive up here yesterday.
No
Tesla
way.
Semi. I've been
Oh,
seeing
that's
them
so
more and
cool.
more.
Okay.
But a PepsiCo Tesla Semi traveled 1,076 miles on a single day with 3 brief charging sessions. These are 750 kilowatt
Do
chargers.
we know how brief? That would be really interesting.
Yeah, a couple of the chargings. Well, one of them, they filled up the battery to almost 90%, so I'm guessing that one was a little bit
45
longer.
minutes or so, probably, yeah.
Tesla's estimate is that 20 to 25 minutes from a 20 to 80% charge on these things.
Really?
That's the estimate.
See, but that's okay. I
That's
don't
not bad.
mind truckers, and I'm sure truckers don't mind either, like going to stop for coffee and stretching a little bit. 20 minutes, that's not bad.
Well, even like if you think about it, so first of all, the vast majority of Class 8 trucking, which is what we're talking about here, is well under 500 miles. And you get to your destination and you go to drop off your cargo. Well, it takes a little bit to unload. You can plug it in right there, have the charging ports, the truck will be done before you are.
If they were right.
And that's what PepsiCo Frito-Lay does right now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're saying at the docks, that's where they put the chargers?
That's where PepsiCo currently charges
that's
their semis.
brilliant. Because now you have zero downtime.
Exactly.
Oh, that's really smart. Not only is that wow, actually, yeah, that is.
They
really
can't even drive more than 60 hours a week either.
The
So
truckers.
yeah, you're
Legally,
limited to 60 hours. So like, no matter how I feel like charging is pretty brief.
But 60 hours is a lot of driving.
That is a lot of
I mean,
driving.
that's like almost what 8.5 hours a day. I
Yeah.
guess,
It's a
and
lot.
that's no breaks. Assuming you
Yeah.
know if you're working 5 days.
Well, you'll
now
still have
it's
to
12-hour
fuel.
days.
You'll still have to go to the restroom.
And how long does it take to fuel? Because see, I think we have to remember we have to compare this to actually fueling a diesel truck that carries 100, 200 gallons. I don't know. Maybe we can look up how much does a diesel truck like an
It's
18
got to be
carry?
like 10 minutes at least of fueling. And
yeah.
you have to be there the whole time. You can't walk away from it, leave it unattended.
Why?
15 to 20 minutes.
15 to 20 minutes.
An
Wow.
average truck.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's basically like charging at that point because it takes so long for the pumps to actually empty the liquid into your truck.
Cost between $375 to $900 to fill up the tank.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's insane.
A lot of people will say, yeah, but they suck
About
in the
100
winter.
gallons then. I bet it's 100 gallons. And then $550 per fuel, $500.
Yeah. A lot of people will be like, oh, they suck in the winter and they suck in the elevation. It's true that EVs, diminish significantly in the winter. So do diesels, but EVs way more. But in the slopes, they actually excel, the EVs, because what I found from looking at the early charts on Tesla Cybertruck, or excuse me, the Semi, about 80% of the energy that you need to go back up the hill gets regenerated on your way back down.
80%.
80%. And the other thing is when these trucks are going down the hill, like you smell the brakes, or the truckers are using what's called a Jake brake, which is basically like an engine brake, and that's
Shifting down.
Yeah, and that's fine. It works, but you're not. It's loud, and you're not making any of that energy back. With the Tesla
all burned
Semi,
off.
Yeah, it's just wasted. The Tesla Semi gets it back. You're not using those brakes. You'll probably never have to change the brake pads on those trucks.
That's crazy considering how much the brakes wear on the big semi trucks. When
Absolutely.
you're fully loaded and you're going down, I mean, the brake wear is insane. So, okay, wow, that's actually really incredible. So, well, good for the Tesla Semi here. There's so much about Tesla. I feel like,
Breaking news. Biden to visit Israel on Wednesday.
ooh, yeah, this is going to be the rein-in. It's the rein-in campaign.
Biden's going into...
We're here to support, but we have to do it reasonably. Oh, God, I fell. I'm sorry.
That's a pretty big... It's like a massive security undertaking. I can't imagine having to coordinate all of that. From
Yeah.
a security standpoint, you're going into the Middle East in the middle of a conflict.
It's so funny you say that because it was just earlier. I'm like, should we fly to Israel? And I'm like, I think both of our pilots would quit on the spot.
Yeah, not a chance.
So the answer is no.
Yeah.
So I'll go over one last thing on the Semi, and then McKay, you can end this with the Cybertruck news.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But so regarding the Semi's competitors, we said that the Semi traveled 1,076 miles on a single day. 60% of the miles driven by the Semi, and this is over an 18-day period that the testing was done, the gross weight was over 70,000 pounds, which the maximum weight for Class 8 is 80,000, or actually for any trucking is 80,000. EVs get 82,000, so it's a little bit of a bump there. But comparing those 1,000 miles, the second place, the next best one, is Watt EV's Nikola Tre BEV truck, which got 255 miles per day.
Wow, that's like 1/4.
That's 1/4 of the total.
And what's Watt? Who's Watt EV? And then it's Nikola. What is it? It's a partnership. It must be.
So Watt EV, the same way that like PepsiCo is the one who gets the Tesla ones. These are the companies who are bringing in. This is the trucks that we use, the EV partnerships
it.
we have.
but who's Watt EV? I've never heard of that.
I don't know either. The next one is OK Produce. I don't know them either, but they're the ones who use the Freightliner's E-Cascadia, 181 miles per day. It's
terrible.
And the Volvo VNR Electric got 175 miles per day.
Yeah, it doesn't even compare.
It's not even
and what
close.
are they getting constrained by? Is it because of charging, or do we know why they're so low? That would be interesting.
Tesla has been not only the leaders in performance, but efficiency. Like if you're comparing them to any other EV, they get the most miles per kilowatt.
Yeah. I mean, Tesla. One thing that's so cool about Tesla is there's so much just about to come across. You know, it's like it's almost there. It's like you're kind of grinding to get that. What's a good analogy? Like this, you're pushing the snowball up the mountain, right? And it's like Elon's like pushing it up, and all of Tesla, all the hard workers at Tesla are pushing it up, and then Elon's like, all right, you guys take over. I'm gonna go play Twitter, and then everybody else is like, this just got a little harder, but we're gonna keep pushing it up. And so then every time he gets investigated, you know, there's like Biden slapping the top of the snowball as people are trying to push it up. And so the snowball is trying to get pushed up the mountain, and people are like pushing it up with their backs, and it's like Cybertruck's coming, the semi-truck's coming, the robots coming, better FSD's coming, but it's like it's not at profit stage yet because those things really aren't selling en masse. But when all three of those things sell en masse, that's going to be a runaway snowball. That's going to be glorious. And I mean, that's why like people get so pissed when I say it. But if you look at Tesla stock, late December 2021, was it 20 or 2020? It might have been 2020. Whatever. It's about 32 months ago, 32, 33 months ago. That'd be 20. So 32, 33 months ago, Tesla stock is at the same price as where it is now. Same thing. People are like, oh, but it's already adjusted. Okay, go do the math. It's split adjusted. Tesla stock has done nothing for almost 3 years. And it's because of this, pushing it up. As soon as that comes and rolls over, which will probably happen around the same time rates start getting cut, oh man, that company's going to print money.
McKay, you want to close us off with Cybertruck update?
All right. So for those of you who don't know, Kevin and I have a friendly wager going on. I believe
the wager you mention every time. You're gonna lose, man. He's gonna
500
lose.
deliveries of the Tesla Cybertruck by the end of the year. Well, Kevin, behold your eyes upon the screen.
Oh my God, there are 9. Oh, I think I got $100 richer.
I don't think you did. I think
You know what these manufacturers do, right? Like when they're not finished and they're not ready to be delivered because they don't have the center console, because they don't have the seat, because they don't have the airbag, because they don't have the steering wheel, because they don't have something. They put them on the lot and then they sit there for months while they try to get the parts. Hey Jack, I have a question for you. Okay, come here.
Can I tell you something?
It's unrelated to this, maybe in like 5 minutes or so, because we're live right now.
About that.
Oh yeah, go ahead. If it's about that, yeah, come on in here.
Well, what if there's just only one and the covers just have sticks holding them up to make it look like that?
The covers are just sticks.
what if they push trucks down the hill, Jack? Would that be good? That probably wouldn't be good.
So I have a question for you, Jack. Okay. Tesla, as far as we're aware, has not delivered any actual retail sold Cybertruck yet. We're at 0. So Tesla's sold, they had the auction for one, and they got other candidates. Tesla sold 0 Cybertrucks so far. But there are many, many people who want the Cybertrucks.
And they have the Cybertruck.
They're making them. They're working on making them. So McKay made a bet with me. Yeah. He says if by New Year's, which is in like 2.5 months, Christmas time, right? Christmas, New Year's, it's like 60, 70 days or whatever away, which is crazy to say, 60, 70 days. He bet me $100. So I'm going to win $100 if Tesla sells less than 500 Cybertrucks. He thinks they're going to sell 500 or more or whatever we said.
So there's going to be, so Cybertrucks are going to be out by that time?
The goal, Elon Musk, God, Elon, says Cybertrucks are going to start selling this year. I think they're going to sell a few dozen, like maybe 20 or 30. McKay thinks they're going to sell 500. Some people think they're going to sell thousands. What do you think?
Yeah, but what if if no one wins the $100? Because what if it's like 10 and you did?
Oh, then I win. If it's under 500, I win.
Oh.
How many do you think, Jack?
What do
What's
you
your
think?
guess?
What's your guess?
Just put a number out there.
Like 35.
35. All right.
I think Jack's gonna win.
If you get it right, you get, I think, $100 from both of them.
If you get
wow.
35,
If it's exactly
okay,
35.
you're gonna accelerate this bet. If you nail it and they deliver 35 by the end of this year, keep this in mind. This is like very low chance, okay? But if you hit 35, I'll buy you the Lego Titanic.
Fair trade.
That's awesome.
That's
And
it for
maybe
today.
tomorrow, people are asking, maybe tomorrow we could do like a Tesla earnings prediction
Oh yeah,
before the earnings call.
We can do that. We'll do that tomorrow. That's
Yeah,
a good
tomorrow.
idea. Okay, anything left?
Nope. Glad we had this talk.
That's
500,
it.
baby.
Wow. Okay, so check out meetkevin.com. Learn more about the new Bruce Pro courses. Also, HouseHack fundraise is expiring for this year, November 1st. That's Fed Day, so we'll see you then. Jerome Powell speaks on the 19th, so I'll be covering that live, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
Subscribe. Road to 2 million, baby.